Well, it's always an immense pleasure to come back up to Coventry. So many memories here over so many years, so many connections with the church I'm at Forest Fold, Crowborough, and so many people that I've got to know over decades here. So it's a privilege to come back and to bring to you part of God's Word this morning, which I hope will be a help to you. We're in Psalm 62 this morning, the second of the Psalms we had read. It's on page 479, I think, of your church Bibles. Maybe you've been on holiday to rocky areas, mountains or moorlands. Perhaps you've been recently or planning to go soon. Well, this passage, this psalm that we're looking at, became very special to me when we first went to Dartmoor. Maybe you've been down to Dartmoor in Devon, and there's plenty of rocky outcrops there on the top of hills, often known as tors. And this was a time when I was reading through the Psalms, and I was coming to the Psalm 62, and it brought it to life. Made it special. It's been special to me since. And rocks do point us to God. Rocks point us to God. I don't know whether you find it helpful. Do you find it helpful to think of God as a rock? Well, I do. And many others do. And often in pastoral life, I remind people that God is a rock. And I'd like to do that this morning with the psalm that we're looking at. The wonderful picture of God as a rock comes out in this Bible song. The Psalms are Bible songs. And if you've got Psalm 62 open, you'll see it there in verse 2. He alone is my rock. Your eyes go down a bit further. Verse 6, he only is my rock. Next verse afterwards, verse 7, my mighty rock. And it's also in the previous song, that's what we read, Psalm 61. They have the lovely verse 2. From the end of the earth I call to you. When my heart is faint, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Well, in what ways is God rock-like? What ways do you think God is rock-like? Well, we think of sturdiness, don't we, when we think of rocks. When you're on a rock, you are firm and secure. In the moorland areas, there was at Dartmoor, there's often marshy areas, very boggy. Your feet go down, you get very muddy. And in contrast to that, when you've got your feet on the rock of a tor, it's very secure. It's a sturdiness. God is sturdy. A rock is unchanging. The configurations stay the same largely. This is one of the tors on Dartmoor. I know if you can distinguish it in your mind, I guess so many of them look the same. This is Haytor. Haytor. And I guess it's stayed the same over many decades and centuries. They largely stay the same. People 100 years ago, perhaps in the early cars, went up in their very old vintage cars, but the rock was the same. And years and decades and centuries before that, other travelled up in their sort of costume of the age, but the rocks were the same. There's something changeless about the rocks. And God is a point of stability in our shaking lives. He's changeless in our changing circumstances. And this can be known personally. Notice in this psalm, when it refers to God as a rock, it is personal. Verse 2, he alone is my rock. Verse 6, he only is my rock. Verse 7, my mighty rock. Do you know God personally as your rock? Can you say, my rock? It's a wonderful privilege to be able to say that. when life is rocky in terms of rocking up and down, we need to know God as our rock, as our rock. And as we look at this psalm, there's one verse particularly that stands out. It's meant to stand out, and that's the verse we're going to focus on. So if you cast your eye down, maybe you'll catch wind of which one I'm on. One verse that's meant to stand out more. He talks through his experience, which is helpful, and we'll draw from that. But he's got one verse where he's especially sort of projecting the lesson to others. And that's in verse 8. Verse 8, trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. So sometimes when you're reading in a book, certain things will be sort of in big font to sort of draw attention to it. Or maybe we might highlight through it with our fluorescent pen. Or maybe if we've got on our app, it might be flashing. Well, verse 8 is that verse for us this morning when David says, well, this is my experience, folks, but this is what I want you to take from it. O people, verse 8. It's also followed by a Selah, and we've got to know precisely what a Selah means, but it's generally thought of something to pause and reflect, sort of chew on. So the verse has just been mentioned, verse 8. Take in, think, mull over this. So we've got one main verse this morning to enjoy. We are going to draw from the rest of the psalm. And as we think about verse 8, I want to think of a what, a when, a how, and a why. What, when, how, why. And maybe as you look at the verse, you're thinking, yeah, I know where he's going. I know where this message is going. Oh, that's okay. That's good if you're already halfway there. But we're going to progress through that. And so we think first of what. What are we to do? What are we encouraged to do in this verse? And the answer is trust in him. Trust in God. That is what he wants us to do. To have confidence in God. To be secure in him. I don't know what you rest on in difficult times, what you depend on, where you find your security. Sometimes we put our trust in people. And it's a great blessing to have, isn't it? Trustworthy friends, trustworthy family, trustworthy work colleagues or neighbours. That's a great blessing. But they're not ultimately our place of trust, whatever their status. Verse 9, those of low estate are but a breath. Those of high estate are a delusion. In the balances they go up, they are together lighter than a breath. And trust in people, ultimately. We might think of money. And we're grateful for good finances. If you've got a bit of money in the bank, that's very handy. You've got a steady income. That makes life easier, a bit more predictable. Maybe you've got a pension lined up perhaps, and maybe that's wise and good and helpful. It often is. But ultimately, finance is flimsy and passing, whether it's been gained in good ways or bad ways. Verse 10, put no trust in extortion. Set no vain hopes on robbery. If riches increase, set not your heart on them. Now, when we get down to it, our basic trust needs to be in the one who is solidly trustworthy. It needs to be in the eternal God. We need to be ultimately resting in him. We need to look to him, lean on him, have him as your bedrock. Have confidence in his plans and his promises and his care. We were camping a few weeks ago, despite resolving at least twice in our life not to camp anymore. We ended up camping, and it was a good time. It was quite wet. We were up at Keswick going to some of the conference, or I went to the conference. My wife stayed for the whole week. And just the act of camping set me back over some of our holidays in the past. And there was a period when we were kindly given the use of somebody's motorhome for a couple of weeks. We weren't very well off. Holidays were a bit difficult in those days. And we were kindly lent our motorhome. It's a nice new motorhome. And I remember some words of advice from the people who owned the motorhome. And that is, you need a hard-standing pitch. You need a hard-standing pitch. You needed to park it on concrete. You couldn't put it on grass. If it rained, if it got slushy, the weight of the motorhome would sink in, and you'd be wheel spinning, and you'd probably have to get a tractor or something bigger to haul you out. So you've got to be on the solid stuff. You've got to be on the solid stuff. Well, our circumstances, our problems in life are often heavy and weighty. And life throws at us its wind and its rain. And it makes things, if you like, slippery. And we need something firm. You need something firm to rest on. We need to trust in God. When life gets sort of wet and muddy and slippery, we need to be resting on God. We need to be looking to Him for security and for help. And this is David's message from this psalm, from this verse particularly. Trust in Him. Look to Him. Lean on Him. Learn to draw your strength from God. That is the what of our verse this morning. Trust in Him. But then we think about when. We think about when. When are we to trust in Him? And David had experienced a tough time. A tough time. He was experiencing a tough time. We get a flavour of it in verses 3 and 4. We get a little bit of an insight into his circumstances. And he felt under attack. He felt as though he might collapse. Verse 3, how long will all of you attack a man to batter him like a leaning wall, a tottering fence? Quite vivid, isn't it? He felt lied to. He felt targeted. He felt cheated. Verse 4, they only plan to thrust him down from his high position. They take pleasure in falsehood. They bless with their mouths, but inwardly they curse. We don't know the exact details. We can't fix exact details of this psalm, but it could well have been the time when Absalom and co. committed treachery, tried to dislodge David from his position as king. It was a painful time. It was a time when he was greatly let down by those who he should have been able to trust. And we can go through similar circumstances, can't we, in our lives, where we are let down, where we are deceived, where we are cheated, where we are sort of targeted and picked on and under assault. Mentally, if not physically. And at times like this, we need to be able to look to the one who never lets anyone down. To the rock, to our God. But David's lesson isn't just for his own specific situation, though we might understand that sometimes. It's for the whole range of situations. Because as he tells people about what they need to do, he says, trust in Him at all times. Trust in God at all times. And life has its times. It has its situations. Here are some. Maybe you can relate to them. Times of guilt. times of anger, steaming underneath, times of uncertainty. What's going to happen? Times of fear, feeling threatened. Times of ill health. Times of loss. As you relate to some of those, that's me at the moment, a combination, or you can add to them and say, well, actually, yeah, speaking of times, well, this is what I'm going through. When we were camping, my watch started playing Silly Billies, and I couldn't sort it out. I was away from home, didn't have batteries and instructions and that, so I had several days where I couldn't tell the time. So I couldn't count my steps, which was a smaller issue, but another issue which I'm used to doing. And so I would be thinking, well, what's the time? And it would just sort of be gobbledygook on my watch, and I couldn't tell the time. And, well, I'd have to find it out a more normal way. A lot of people look at their clock, their phones, don't they? Or they look at a clock, and I had to improvise in some way. But in the light of this psalm, it made me think, well, I don't know the time. I can't see the time, but in the light of this, I do know the time. It's Time to Trust. It's our title, isn't it? Time to Trust. That's not a bad thing to remind ourselves sometimes. We look at the time, I don't know how many times we look at the time a day, tens and tens of times we look at the time. Not a bad, every so often, to think when you're asking the time or thinking of the time, what's the time? To think, the Bible does tell me the answer to that. So there's a specific answer where it's, was it just gone 20 past 12, 12:22 according to my watch, which now has its battery and working. That is the time. But there's another answer. It's time to trust. It's time to trust. Trust in him at all times. What your circumstances are now, today, this week, come with, it's time to trust. It's time to trust. Always a time to trust, especially when life feels falling apart like David. When? At all times. And we might think of how. How does this work out? How are we to trust God in the range of circumstances which we go through? And we've been given one answer earlier in the psalm. I just want to spot that before we move on. And one of the answers is it often involves waiting. It often involves waiting. Verse 1, for God alone my soul waits in silence. From him comes my salvation. Verse 5, for God alone, O my soul, wait in silence, for my hope is from him. Not everything is sorted out quickly, is it? We'd like to wave a magic wand over a situation and ping, it's all totally right as we want it. And the Lord is able to do great things in short time and does sometimes, but so much of the time God's dealings with us are more gradual and things take time. And there is a waiting involved. There's a quiet waiting involved, waiting in silence. There are some things that we need to sort out and do. We're not trying to let ourselves off the hook and be totally motionless. There are things to do. There are things that we should do. But there are some things, a lot of things that are beyond our control and beyond our responsibility, and we wait on the Lord. Some things are not actually sorted out in this life. We wait for his Son from heaven, it says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 1. We wait the ultimate fixing of some things which are not in this life. So there is a waiting that's part of trusting. But for our main answer in this verse, how is it that we trust God? How does it express itself? He says, pour out your heart before him. Pour out your heart before him. We express our trust by telling God, by unloading it on God, by being open with God, by passing it on to him. You know that experience? That's what's encouraged in this psalm. It may be something you've done in the past. It's something that we need to do now. And it's very descriptive, isn't it? I love the imagery here. Pour out your heart before him. Pour out your heart before him. So, of course, in those days, you didn't have your water tapped nicely, through the streets up into your kitchen and coming out of your tap. You had to get the water, and you'd have to go to a well or a stream or a river, and you sort of carry it back. And water's quite heavy, isn't it? If you've been camping and you've got a water carrier, a water container, and you go to the other side of the field where the drinking water is and you fill it up. It doesn't seem too bad when you first do it, but if your tent's over the other side of the field and you filled it up quite, you won't get quite a lot of water, your arm's now falling off, isn't it, by the time you get back to the tent? Well, in those days, they collect water. You don't just go with a teacup. You want to make the most of the journey. You get a water pot, you fill it up, and you're coming back to where your home is, and you're sagging as you go, and you see your house in the distance. You're getting nearer, and you're feeling very heavy, and you're feeling very burdened. And then you get to where your home is, and perhaps you've got some sort of container or vat or whatever, and you get to the point at last where you can tip your water container out, and you pour it out, and you feel the relief. You've just got your container, you haven't got anything in it. You're lightened, all the water and the weight has been borne by something else. It's now in your container. And that's what the imagery is here. That's what we're to do with our loads. We're to pour them out, to tip it, to let the weight be transferred on the Lord, to let him bear our load. It's like it is in 1 Peter 5 verse 7, casting all your cares upon him because he cares for you. And what might be in the water pot, if we can think it through a bit more, what might be in your current sort of weight of burden? Well, it might be guilt. Guilt is quite a burden, isn't it? And you can unburden that on the Lord. The guilt is not for us to sort of weigh down more and more. It is to pour out on the Lord and let him bear. Jesus is the sin bearer. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So, Lord, I'm so sorry I was so impatient. I'm so sorry I spoke so harshly. I'm so sorry I made a mess of that responsibility. I'm so sorry I was so nasty to that person. I'm so sorry that I neglected you for so many years. It weighs me down. I feel the pain of it. I pour it out on you. I pour out my soul before you. It may be guilt. It may be family troubles. It may be family troubles. They're big troubles, aren't they? Family troubles, very big troubles. And if it was Absalom, well, it is a big family trouble that David was going through. This is his son who's turned his back on him and gone away. And so he's got all the trouble of sort of being king and having treachery. And he's got all the sorting out and things to, but at the same time as the personal pain that it's his son that's doing it. And we can pour out. We need to pour out. We have to pour out our family troubles before the Lord. Or it may be a lack of family. That's a hard one to bear, isn't it? It's often a very quiet one to bear, where people hope for family. hope for children, or would love to have more family around them, and it's not been their pathway. Hannah in the Bible had no children. And in early book of Samuel 1, she's seen praying very earnestly. In fact, the onlooker thinks she's drunk. She's so sort of heartfelt in her prayers. And what does she say? I'm pouring out my soul. Pouring out. So he's saying, pouring out my soul to the Lord, before the Lord. It may be the hurt of how we've been treated. These Psalms, they point us to Jesus. And Jesus had that experience, didn't he, of being so badly treated and let down by those close to him, deserting him, betraying him, by those mocking him, scarring him. And we're told in Hebrews that he lets out those cries and tears to the Lord. These Psalms are a pattern of how the faithful one, the Lord Jesus, was and would be in pouring out those mistreatments and maltreatments to the Lord. You can do that. That's what we are to do. Or it may be our fears. Next month brings troubling things. The summer's okay, but then comes September, and you know what September brings? Well, I don't know what September brings, but you know what September might bring for you, and maybe it's quite frightening. It's different. It's new. It's fresh. I was coming home from Keswick as I came home ahead of Esther. Needed to get back, get ready, sort it out for the weekend ministry. So a long journey back, and I was thinking, there were three big things on my mind as I came back that I had to face. One was sort of family-ish, a couple were more sort of church life-ish, and I thought, well, you've got to do this. You've got to pour out your soul to the Lord of the things that are daunting you, the fears. Might be uncertainty. Another king, isn't there? Facing great threats, but who says, Lord, we don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, but our eyes are to you. It may be the sort of burden of missing out. Psalm 42 is seen as a psalm, a bit more of a, it's cast down, a bit more of a depressed psalm, I suppose you could say. And part of the reason is he's missing out. He used to be able to join others for worship, and he's not at the minute, and he feels low because of that. And it might be the case for you. Well, not so much probably if you're here. Maybe perhaps often you can't be here. Maybe people are watching online or afterwards, and you know they're missing out. They're not here, and that's par for life now because of your limitations. There's quite a lot that you miss out on that you used to do. And what does it say here? Psalm 42 and verse 4. These things I remember as I pour out my soul. You have the phrase there. I pour out my soul. How I would go with the throng and lead them in procession to the house of God with glad shouts and songs of praise, a multitude keeping festival. But it's not happening now, and I don't do it now. And I'm pouring out my soul to you, Lord, about it. Or it could be that we are weak and life seems fading quickly. Psalm 102. Before we even get into the psalm, as it goes on, you see it's a psalm of life passing, of years fading, of it all going quickly. But how does it start in the title? This is interesting. Psalm 102, a prayer of one afflicted when he is faint and pours out his complaint before the Lord. So it's such a helpful range of circumstances they're referred to in the Bible, isn't it? And I don't know what's in your water pot, what sort of cocktail of those circumstances, and telling us how to trust, pour it out before the Lord. And it seems to fill up again quickly, doesn't it? So you have to do it again. Well, you keep learning this, aren't we? We're slow learners as Christians. Pour it out again before the Lord. Trust in him at all times. Pour out your heart before him. Are you doing that? Do you need the encouragement this morning to do that in your circumstances? I expect you do. I speak to myself about these things. But we may say, well, why? Why? Why should we? What reason have we to trust God? And it carries on. God is a refuge for us. God is a refuge for us. As well as sturdy, as well as stable, we've already started to think about such things, rocks can prove a shelter. A shelter. I remember back to when we were on Dartmoor and that first holiday we had in the area. We were on one of the tours, and it's like you can see weather coming, and sometimes the weather that's coming, you can see it's like a curtain draped from the cloud. You think, yeah, there's rain on the way. I can see the curtain of rain coming our way. We thought that was going to happen, but we were in a tour, and some of the rocks were sort of overhead, overarching. We could go underneath. So we thought, well, if we do have a heavy shower, we shall be okay. All of us and family will go under there, we'll stay dry, and we'll be able to carry on afterwards. It was a shelter to us. Well, that's the picture here of God is a refuge for us. You may know of the song Rock of Ages, the older hymn, Rock of Ages. And perhaps you know of the background. The background's thought to be, although somebody earlier this morning said there was a question mark over it, which I hadn't heard of before. But if you go to somewhere in Somerset, there is a cleft in the rock. And the hymn writer, Toplady, wrote this song as he travelled home, and a storm was coming, and he found a cleft in the rock, and this cleft in Somerset near Cheddar Gorge, they think it's there, there's a plaque there, and he sort of sheltered himself in the cleft of the rock so that the storm came over and it didn't get him. And it made him think of Jesus as that safe place of protection, and wrote, Rock of Ages, cleft for me, let me hide myself in thee. So Jesus is a place of refuge for failures and for sinners and for people who deserve God's judgment. Jesus has died on the cross so that we can shelter under him and be safe and secure. He is a refuge, and if you've never had your failure properly dealt with, your sin properly dealt with, your deserved judgment sort of quelled, if you like, then it is to Jesus as a refuge you need to go. God is a refuge for us. And what is it about God that makes him such a safe place? Well, the psalm ends with three things that remind us, that remind you and I that we can trust God. Now, in the last two verses, God is powerful. God is a God of steadfast love. And God is just. What a combination you have. Let's read those last two verses back in Psalm 62. Once God has spoken, twice have I heard this, that power belongs to God, and that to you, O Lord, belongs steadfast love, for you will render to a man according to his work. So when we are weak and frail and flimsy, we remember God's might and control and sovereignty, and that his overall plan is not shaken, it remains firm. He is a God who is sovereign, and we can take refuge in that. But power alone is of some comfort, but not full comfort, because some have power but use it badly. But we have a God who is a God of steadfast love, reliable love, towards those who take refuge in him. Another picture of shelter that the Bible has, not just of the rock, but is of the mother hen. And the chicks take refuge under the shelter of her wings. It's a place of warmth and a place of comfort and a place which is hidden from the difficulties. And God is a God of faithful love. And so we can take refuge in him. And what helps us when inside of us we're screaming with the unfairness of the way we've been treated? And some people are treated very badly. Where do we go with that sense of growing injustice? Yes, we may take some literal recourse that we need to with certain authorities, but what is it that finally steadies us and relieves us and protects us? It's remembering that God is the final judge and he is the perfect judge. Power belongs to God, and that to you, O Lord, belongs steadfast love, for you will render to a man according to his works. All the wrongs that have been done will be dealt with. They'll be dealt with either by the individual or by being taken out by Christ on the cross. So 1 Peter 2 says this in verse 23. When he was reviled, he did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but continued entrusting himself to him who judges justly. You can take refuge in God because he is judge and he is just. And ultimately, you can unload your injustices on him. So we've had one verse, just one verse this morning. Sometimes one verse. Sometimes we preach from whole chapters or several chapters, don't we? But sometimes it's good just to suck on one verse, isn't it? And that's what we've got this morning. And it's one verse, but there's lots in it, isn't there? It's very practical, it's very helpful, it's very timely for us. Trust in him at all times. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Well, may God make that one verse powerful and helpful in the lives of many of us.